we're here with Arjay Ruggles, who is the founder of Homeroom. And we're really excited to talk to him today, learn about his path to starting Homeroom, how he's using no code to help enable that, and just more about no code in general and community. And I'm sure we'll touch on a bunch of different topics. So yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
And yeah, thank you for coming in the middle of your fundraise, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well. So yeah, much appreciated. First, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your background and how did you come up with the idea for Homeroom and kind of get it to where it is right now.
But yeah, so just a bit about my background. I am a two-time founder. So in addition to running Homeroom, I also run Playtyme, which is an adult lifestyle brand for kinksters, fetishists, and adult content creators. And so I have had a really non-traditional entry into tech, which I think is probably why I'm such a big fan. I was a sex worker and makeup artist, actually. And going into 2019 and 2020, I was like really starting to build a career. I was working at Mac. I started doing classes for LGBT individuals, trans women, and women of color over the age of 40, trying to teach them about makeup and beauty and how to use products and everything. And then COVID. So overnight, in the span of a month, I lost my job. I obviously wasn't doing sex work, and of course, you know how the United States treats sex work. So of course, I didn't have insurance. I didn't have backups. I couldn't apply for unemployment. All those options weren't available to me, and so I kind of was just in this weird space where I didn't know what to do. And I had taken a job trying to get back into IT, but because of COVID, I wasn't able to actually train or onboard. So for the first 6 months, I literally was like answering phone calls like maybe 8 times a day and spending the rest of the 7.5 hours doing nothing. So rather than waste it, I started trying to find something to do. I built Playtime solo for a year. And we really just focused on community building as a way for us to get our name out there. And so I built our Shopify, ran our email marketing, all of our influencer marketing, our social media, like all of it, and just read and read and read and as much as I could and started learning about it. And so because of no code, I was able to scale. We did 53K in sales the first year. I brought on a virtual assistant who's now my executive assistant and started bringing on various community members to turn into a community driven and community run company. Which now it is. It runs independent of myself. I only have to spend like an hour or two on it now. And so what ended up happening is we built this Discord server. We were like super excited about it. We had partnered with someone to do like a gate on it. So people had to like sign up for a plan and everything. And we tried to turn it into a social network and it worked really well. We had people from all walks of life, doctors, lawyers, servers, waiters, whatever, all finally having a safe space to talk about kink, talk about all these things that they were interested in, find friends, not feel so weird and out of place for once, and do it in a private, safe space. And so, as a business owner, I said, all right, built this thing, it's going well. Now I need to understand the value from it. Let me build my OKRs. Let me build my OARs. Let me start to develop metrics. And all of those resources just didn't exist. Discord has really lackluster server insights, in my opinion, and it was just really difficult to understand the value that we were providing, and also understanding how to execute and run operations. And so that's where Homeroom came from. And essentially, what we're doing is building an all-in-one software platform that allows you to merge automation, people management, community operations, and community insights into one single place. So creators large and small, enterprises large and small, can finally have the tools necessary to build, manage, and scale communities of any size with all of the resources possible to make that happen. So yeah, it's kind of the story of how it came together.
That's amazing. Incredible story. That I have a ton of questions that come out of that. So I think first, before we go too much into Homeroom, I'd love to learn a little bit more about Playtime because that's super. There are a lot of really interesting things there. One, I'm curious what tools, like you mentioned, use no code tools to build. So yeah, maybe start there. Like, what did you use to get that off the ground?
Yeah.
Use right now to run it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Playtime is probably the most fun. In fact, for those of you who can't see, I'm wearing a button-up shirt that has dinosaurs on it. This is one of our most popular prints. So yeah, I love it. It's a lot of fun. I basically dress like a giant toddler, is what I like to tell people. But yeah, I mean, basically what I started with, I mean, a lot of people don't think about it this way, but Shopify in of itself is kind of a no-code platform, honestly. You're essentially able to build an entire e-commerce company without ever writing a line of code. And so that was kind of my introduction to it, and doing entire web design, integrating different apps. And then from there, I started kind of like going forward. I discovered Notion really early on, which was just mind blowing to me because it was like not only did I have a space for operations and agile project management, I had my own internal wiki, I had help desk, I could make websites from it. And so from that, it just kept growing and growing. And so what we did was we used Shopify for our front end. We used Tapcart for our mobile apps, native mobile apps on iOS and Android for Playtime. We started using Notion for pretty much everything internal. So all of our people management, our workflows, onboarding, task management, wikis, all of that is stored inside Notion.
Mhm.
Our corporate website, we use Super as a way to publish the website for it. So if you go to hq.playtyme.co, Playtyme, that's all inside Notion. And so then we use Tally Forms and embedded that in Notion to do our job applications, had those flow into Airtable. And so it just kind of kept growing and growing. And so now that I've kind of reached the ultimate graduation of using Xano, which may not be familiar with that one, but essentially that is your backend. You can build your own API endpoints. You can build your own API documentation. We've reached that level now of trying to basically build all of our software as much as we can, and it's becoming really powerful. So yeah.
That's awesome, and I think that's also a great example of, I think, how people can use no code. It can seem overwhelming. It's like you hear all those things, but you don't
Mhm.
have to start with all those things. You can start, like you said, with just Shopify, and then
Yep.
add on the website with Super, and you realize you need forms, and you're using Tally, and then you start using. And I think that that's a really good way to kind of think about as you kind of add on what you need. Yeah.
What I always like to tell people is, and I'm so happy I discovered no code. I went to school for computer science for a year and I stopped because my brain does not work in a way in which I can be a traditional programmer. It just doesn't work that way for me. And so one of the things I love about no code is I'm incredibly visual. If you can't tell by the giant rainbow dinosaurs on my shirt, I'm very visual. And so what was really cool was the way that I always think about it is a programmer is going to tell you, Python's really good for scripting or C++ is very good for object oriented. It's the exact same thing with no code, but instead you're just using software solutions rather than programming languages. So for me, it's like if I'm trying to do automation between multiple applications and it doesn't require a lot of setup, I'm going to be, all right, Zapier is the best way to go. If I need to be able to have something that's a little bit more custom, I might use Innate or Integromat. If I
Right.
need to do forms, Tally form. It's the exact same concept, but instead of thinking programming languages, you're using applications, and that's the way I like to explain it.
Yeah, totally. It's just like you're still coding in a way. You're just doing
Mhm.
it visually. It's faster, cheaper. You can do it on your own. Yeah.
I like to tease some of my developer friends because they'll show me stuff they've been working on. They're like, "Oh, this took me 3 or 4 months," and most no code people, especially when they reach our level, will say, "I could do that in like 6 hours." So it's really cool.
Yeah, totally. And so I guess on Xano, are you using that? I haven't learned a ton about Xano yet. Actually, I want to learn more about it. Are you using that as like a backend for Shopify and everything? Or how are you
No, so actually we're planning to use Xeno for Homeroom.
using that?
Yeah, so we just started really diving into it, so we haven't implemented anything yet.
Got it.
However, I'm very bullish on the platform. I think it's a really great software solution. Prakash over there, me and him have talked, and I think one of the things that they've done really well is that they have tried not to do everything. I think a lot of no code solutions make the mistake of trying to be all in one, and I don't think that's the right approach. I think
Right.
figure out what you're really good at and the niche that you're or the problem you're trying to solve and stick to it. Which for Xano, they say up front, they're like, we are not the place you start. We are the place you graduate to,
Yes.
which I
Yeah.
think is such a great way to do it. And so they've done like office hours and they have the one thing I like is they have their non-technical founder lead the office hours to like show how a non-technical person can use Xano, which is really cool. But Prakash, he's done some really cool sessions. He did like one where he built a Star Wars cantina using Xano, which is like such a cool idea. And so yeah, it's just a really great solution. But I tell everyone like it's what you graduate to when you're ready to build backends.
Yeah.
For just getting started, stick to Airtable. That's gonna be all you need.
I I think that's spot on. Yeah. And I agree. I think Xano, the reason I'm interested in it and want to learn more is I've been impressed by the product, and it seems like it's really solving a need, I think, for people
Agreed.
who need, when they graduate from, like, at a certain point, Airtable is just gonna start breaking down at a certain scale. And I think that's awesome that Xano is there for that.
I agree, and it's funny because a lot of people, like for example, most people don't know Airtable has a max of 50,000 records.
Mm,
A lot of people don't know those things, and so what you just touched on, I think, is the most important part of scale, and I think that's why Bubble has taken off. Is you're able to scale a platform to thousands and thousands of users, and it can, work well. My frustration with Bubble is it's very closed, which is the reason I don't use it, but I definitely think it's a great solution for so many
Yeah,
people.
totally. So the other thing I was interested in, so you mentioned that Playtime is community run now, and it sounds like the community, or maybe you can elaborate, is running it
Yeah.
in some ways. And what kind of comes to mind with me there too is, I know that seems to be kind of the Web3 dream that you see on Twitter, a lot of like a community run thing. And I don't know if there's any, similarities there, or kind of how the community incentivized to run it, and how is that working? That's just seems like a really novel idea there.
Yeah, yeah, happy to answer. So what I mean by community run is we have done it. We've really been focused on trying to find community members in order to run various parts of the organization. And I'm sorry, give me 1 second. I'm so sorry. I'm so
No
sorry.
worries.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no. So what I mean by that is for when we say community driven and community run for Playtime,
Yeah.
what I mean is that we actually have found community members to run various job positions within the company. And so, for example, we brought on interns to take over pretty much all of our marketing. So we have people who are in the fetish community who run our TikTok, our Instagram, our Twitter. We have a community manager in training who I've been personally training to run our Discords. He also helps lead our intern team, and they run their own marketing meetings and everything independent of me. Our podcast, one of our collaborators, he was originally an ambassador that we worked with, and they have affiliate codes to promote our products and stuff like that. But turns out he's an Emmy award-winning journalist, unbeknownst to me. And
Uh-huh.
so he has his own podcast that we produce, and he does all the editing. And one of our interns helped with doing the editing and the promo clips and everything like that. And then now we have community members who are now starting to learn more about our Shopify operations. And so it's really cool because it's like I get to sit back and be more of a leader and a CEO while they bring to the table the things they want to do. And the reason is my leadership style, I like to be very decentralized. It's a big reason why I'm a big fan of Web3. We set OARs, area of responsibility. People know what their job roles are, and they are the people who need to be making the decisions. We'll asynchronously collaborate on thoughts, opinions, and give a outline of what we think should be done for various decisions. But then ultimately, whoever is in that area of responsibility, it's their job to make the call, make the
Mm.
decision, and then put it into practice. And so it's allowed us to operate so much more effectively because essentially we're allowing people to own their own roles and have fun with it. And so up until now, a lot of it has been volunteer. Because I've been so focused on homeroom, I haven't been able to really set up the incentive structures that I want to. But now that we're about to finally close, Playtime is going to be reincorporated as a C corp.
Mm.
We'll be setting aside a community equity section, so we'll be able to
Mm.
offer equity to various community members who contribute. And then we're hopefully going to, that as we start to increase our sales and increase our numbers, we'll then be able to do profit splits with various people in the community who help us out. So it's really fun.
Mm. That's awesome. It sounds like you created this community that, created this community that's passionate about your product, about your business. And when you do that, then you can start bringing those people into the business. Kind of the secret there. So the hard part is, creating something that people are passionate about.
Exactly. That's why the whole concept of DAOs has been really fascinating to me because essentially Playtime is a DAO. I just don't like saying it is because it's kind of a buzzword to me right now. I don't think many people
Right.
know what it takes to actually run a business, and so, but it really is. It's community driven, it's community run, and community operated, which is what I always wanted. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is a DAO. I guess it's a DAO, but it doesn't have like a cryptocurrency
No,
behind it. But
no.
it's funny. I have another podcast with my friend called What Do You Think? And we talk
Yeah.
about different business ideas, and every week's a different topic. And we
Mhm.
did DAOs a week ago, and we kind of had that same discussion of like, you don't necessarily need a cryptocurrency for it to be a DAO, right?
Mhm.
Or I think that's what's so interesting about DAOs in general, is we're still figuring out like what is the right, how do you set it up? What's the governance? What are all these things? And it's interesting, even what you're doing of, if you set aside equity, and that's really interesting, and other people could potentially follow that, and it could be a C corp, right? It doesn't have to be
Yep.
and I think that's uh, it's super cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because we don't do anything crypto related for Playtime because the audience that we target there really hates crypto. Like it would tank the company if we did anything crypto related there. And that's okay. I think we're in that space right now. I like to use the analogy we're in the dot-com boom of crypto right now. A
Right.
lot of scams, a lot of pyramid schemes, a lot of really, horrible stuff. But on the flip side, there's so much experimentation happening, so much innovation happening, and a lot of people are making some really cool things that we're going to see the next Google or Amazon come out once the bubble pops. And that part is the exciting part. And so what I've try to say, and I agree with you, is that a DAO doesn't need a cryptocurrency. It doesn't need to be tied to blockchain. It's more so the structure in the organization. It's a modern day co-op. That's really the best way to think about it.
Yeah, totally. Sweet. All right. So that was really interesting. Let's change gears a little bit to Homeroom, right? I think this
Yeah.
is kind of a good link to it, talking about community. So I guess with Homeroom, what are the no-code tools that you're using on that platform? You touched a little bit with Xano.
Yeah.
And then maybe where are you now, and kind of we can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually built Homeroom's tech stack in like 6 hours, and I always like talking about it. I built it in, so I used this application called Immersed VR, which is basically like everything you wanted from virtual desktop, but better. I can have like up to 5 virtual screens and everything. It's really cool. And so I hopped into VR on my Oculus, blew up my computer screen to like the size of a theater, and just went to town. And so our backend currently for all of our clients and everything is run through Notion. So that's where we have our client dashboards, our community playbooks, our bot libraries, and everything of that nature. We use Integromat to do all the automation. So like if somebody fills out a form, it notifies us in Discord. We have Slack and Discord, but we prefer to use Discord for internal comms. We use Slack for anyone external who happens to use it and we need to communicate with them.
Yeah.
For our front end, we use TypeDream. That's what our website was built in, was in TypeDream. Love that platform. Super awesome team behind there.
Yeah.
And then for our CRM, billing, and authentication and sign in, we use Outseta. So Jeff is so cool. He was like super awesome when I first set it up. And I was like, hey, Jeff, I have these questions. He was like, here you go, RJ. So super bullish on them as a company. They've just been so incredible. And the product is just absolutely outstanding. So we are currently in the process of working on building a new front end for our website using actually a proprietary system with our internal engineers. I'm super excited about. And then we're looking at Builder HQ as what we're going to be used for our software platform, as an MVP for our software platform.
Got it. So how does the Outseta fit in with like Builder potentially, or that kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, so Builder technically has its own authentication and everything, which would be fine. But the reason we wanted to use Outseta was a couple things. One, we wanted something that could handle sign-ins on our website, billing, and to be able to do a CRM, which Outseta is one of the few tools that does all of it.
Right.
And so what we're basically will hope we'll be able to do is once we've built out the backend on Builder, like the actual application, we'll then use Outseta for all of the sign-in, team accounts, billing, CRM, but they also could be our knowledge base and chat support. So it eliminates the need for us to hack together a whole bunch of other solutions, and instead we can just have one central place for all of that.
Got it. So you could use Builder, for example, as the app, but then instead of having to build all the features that Outseta has in Builder, you can use Outseta.
Exactly. And one of the things I really appreciate that Outseta does is it, and Jeff even has spoken to this before, is they didn't set out to make a no-code tool. They
Right.
just set out to make something that was all-in-one for membership software. It just so happened that they ended up there, which in my opinion is a perfect startup story, really. But they just make it so simple. You just got a couple lines of code, you throw it into your header tag. You're able to customize the UI a little bit with a dark mode or a light mode, branded colors. And also it's really easy for customers. Every customer that we've worked with up until now, when they go to set up their account, go to pay their billing and everything, they're like, RJ, this is so simple. This is so easy. I really appreciate it. I'm like, I didn't build this. Like, I'm not taking credit for this.
Totally. Yeah. We in the last podcast episode with Jeff, it was interesting to learn about that. Like you said, how they started out, going marketing to coders, and it turns out, the no code channel has been really good for them. And right, that's kind of the magic of no code, is you have all this, this whole system, and you don't have to build every. It's kind of like, there's no reason, don't rebuild something if you don't have to.
It's actually the biggest highlight that I make about no code, and why I think so many developers, I'm sure you've seen, are like really toxic towards no code and like really attacking, is they're like, oh, because I think they look at it as their job being replaced, which I don't think of it as that way. The way I think of it is like, if you're working in React, which but if you're working in React, why rebuild a component for over
Right.
and over and over again? We know what a button looks like, especially in Web 2.0. It's going to be circular. It's either going to be a pill, rounded, or square,
Right.
with a knockout or a fill. It's not going to change. It's the
Yeah.
same button no matter what application you're on. So why reinvent the wheel? Make it no code, simplify the process, and then customize a part that you can't. You're going to save yourself so much time. You eliminate the need to redesign stuff. You eliminate a lot of bugs because you're not risking, something breaking. It just simplifies so many things. It makes it so much more accessible.
Yeah, totally. I like to think of it as Ruby on Rails, for example, is coding, obviously, but
Mhm.
it's this framework that takes care of it has all these packages that built in.
Yep,
And no code is kind of like that. It's just taking it to another level.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing that it's awesome that you built this in VR. I feel like you're living in the future. Like you're here in like 2030, like in VR, like using no code to build your startup, which is
I have to say, it does feel like that sometimes. Like, it's so funny because it's like I moved to San Francisco a year ago. January 28th actually
uh-huh.
was the year. And it definitely feels a little surreal because it's like we moved here, me and my husband, we're from Columbus, Ohio, which is it's a big city, but it's not San Francisco. And so within the span of a year, like, to know that we're here and we're about to close our pre-seed, and of course I can't speak to who we're working with yet, but it's incredible the people I've gotten to meet and to connect with. And the day I got to tell my husband, like, we're gonna be fine. I'm gonna have a salary, and because I haven't taken a salary from my jobs at all for the past 2 years. My husband supports us entirely alone, and I got to tell him, I was like, XYZ is happening. Here's what I'm working with, and here's how much money we raised, and I'm used to it. So, like, it feels normal to me. And he's like, and I'm like, oh yeah, and I built our website with the dot. I did it in VR, like, while sitting on the couch next to you. And he's like, what? That's what you were doing? And I'm like, yeah, you saw my hands waving around, and I was telling you. He's like, I didn't know you were building a company with their headset on. I'm like, sorry.
It is amazing. I think this is like Oculus should be promoting this as on like a commercial or
I'll tell
something.
you what. I'll
Like,
tell you what, Zuck. If you want to meet, I'm open to a conversation.
so just to get into the details there a little bit, you're using something called Immerse because I have an Oculus,
Oh
so
my
I
God.
feel like I
Okay.
want to try this out now and
Can
see.
I fangirl for like 2 minutes?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So Immersed, which, by the way, awesome founder. I think his name is Rinji, I think is how you pronounced it. And amazing platform. So basically the way Immersed works is you can have, if you can, on the free level, you can have up to one extra virtual monitor on top of your physical. So for example, if you have dual monitors, you can have up to 3 inside the app.
Okay.
If you have one monitor, you can have up to 2. On the paid, though, you can have up to 4 extra virtual monitors.
Mhm.
And that's on top of what you have physically. So if you have a setup with like 4 monitors, you can have 8
Mhm.
inside of VR, which is really cool. But essentially what it allows you to do is to have your screens in a fully immersive workspace.
Right.
And so sometimes I put myself on the beach, sometimes I put myself in the middle of the Milky Way, other times I'll just sit in all blackness. It really just depends on what environment works for you. And I find it helpful because I'm type 2 bipolar. And so because of that, it's really easy for me to get like distracted or things of that nature. But on the flip side, when I'm hyper focused, I am hyper focused.
Mhm.
And so it's been actually really great because I've been able to kind of turn my mental illness into a superpower. And so I put my headset on, I'm put some music on, put on some lo-fi, and I'm just completely immersed, hence the name, and what I'm trying to achieve. And so yeah, I put myself in VR. I threw up Notion on my main screen. I had Integromat on the one to the right. I had documentation on the left, and then I had Spotify and my podcast and my lo-fi on the monitor above.
Right.
And I was having my Iron Man moment of just getting stuff done. And now, actually, internally, we're testing out the hand controls on Oculus, so I can do no code, use my hands to
Right.
do no code. So that was really fun. I built an Integromat design just using my hands
Oh
in
my God.
VR, which was really cool. So yeah, I got to figure out a way to record it. I don't know how yet I can do that happen,
Right.
but I'll figure it out.
And if you is that like if you're sitting at your desk, you have your keyboard in front of you and you're typing like you normally would, but your
Mhm.
screens are everywhere.
Yeah, and actually they released a feature I think I want to say 2 months ago, where now you pull up your keyboard and it'll have you hit the Q P keys, and then your keyboard will appear in VR. So when you look down, you can see the keyboard where it is in the world as you're typing. So for those, I'm a touch typer, so I don't need to see my keyboard.
Yeah.
But it is nice because you can look down and see your keyboard, and you see your little hands like in VR. It's dope.
Okay, amazing. I'm right after this interview.
You need to go, yeah, go get it. It's totally
it now.
free. It's totally free. And if you do the paid one, it's like $14 a month.
Yeah.
I pay for it. It's worth it to me. So yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, my thought, like when I am in VR, it really is amazing. I've used it. I use it like occasionally, and like I don't know if you've played the ping pong game, but ping pong is really fun on Oculus.
It is.
In some ways, it's almost a little bit scary to me because I can see the future where it's going to be so lifelike in like 5 or 10 years, and it's going to be really comfortable, and it feel like it's going to be this world where we're all in VR all the time, and that scares me a little bit. But
yeah,
it's really cool. So I don't know. I will figure out a way to balance it, I guess. But
I like to tell people. I mean, I feel like if you mind me asking, how old?
29.
Okay, so I'm 29 too.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like our age is the luckiest. And the reason I say that is because like I remember using an almanac when I was little to like do book reports and having to like go to the library and like all that stuff. So our generation went from, I know what the save icon is. It's a floppy disk. Most of Gen Z has never seen one. You know what I mean? Like we went from that through to now. And so I think that's part of the reason why VR seems so incredible to us is because we remember the Virtual Boy. We remember using the blue and red 3D glasses and everything. So to come from that to the Oculus, which is just completely mind blowing. And I was an internet kid and everything. So I remember Second Life when that was like blew up and everybody's like, oh, you're gonna have like a virtual world or an office. This is now actually a reality and that's happening, which is slightly scary. I agree. But I think if done right, which I think Web3 presents the opportunity for, I think it can be really cool. So yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of fundraising, how has that process been for you in as much as you can say? Because it sounds like
it blew my mind, the amount of interest that we got. We've officially reached a point where I'm having to say no, like multiple times a day at this point, which is not a bad problem to have. But for a Black, queer, polyamorous like dude, it's been a lot and it's been exciting, but I also am trying not to take it for granted, just in terms of numbers, like 0.6% of the 176 billion of VC that was deployed in 2020 went to Black founders.
Yeah.
Barely half of a percent. And now for 2021, it looks like that's about 1.8% of VC funding went to Black founders, which improvement, but I think that speaks for itself. I'm not even going to have to say, I don't have to say anything else there. So it is a little bit of that insanity of like realizing how much of a unique opportunity it is and being thankful for it, but also validation and that like, wow, this is such a standout thing that we're trying to do that we have a lot of people interested and not just interested, but like to the point that we were able to we're going to be able to reach our goal. If we close this week, it would have taken 1 month. We would have raised our entire pre-seed in 1 month. Which is incredible for an early stage startup, especially a pre-seed. So I just feel really thankful. I have some incredible advisors who've been giving me some great advice and helping me mold myself into the CEO that I'm going to need to be, because we're going to have to do a lot of things. We have to do things really fast. And I'm going to need to be not only a strong product manager and CTO and everything else, I need to be a strong CEO. And that takes a unique skill set. So I'm just really thankful we have the right people to make that happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think obviously there's so much more progress that needs to be made. So yeah, if when you are just getting started with fundraising, let's say someone, is in your shoes, they maybe have a prototype they're raising their pre-seed round. What do you even do to get started? Who do you reach out to? How do you go from 0 to 1 in terms of just getting started with fundraising?
Well, one of the things that I've done is, and I tell founders, is you are your best salesman for your startup. And I think the mistake some founders do is that they try to rely on other people to like do all the intros and do all the connections. I think that's the absolute wrong way to approach it. Don't be afraid to DM people. Twitter is like the open door into VC, and a lot of people don't realize that. I'm a big proponent of using Twitter for work and not for personal. I think it's a terrible platform for personal use. But I will say, like, slide into those DMs, girl. Like, slide in, because if the deal looks right and it looks attractive, VCs they're in it for the money. They're in it. They're literally started because they want to make tons of money. So they're not going to say no if they see a money opportunity. The other big thing is I use Loom, Loom, which I know some people know, some might not. It basically allows you to record your webcam and your screen at the same time, instantly upload to the cloud. So I always tell people, like, go ahead and get your pitch deck down, get all that stuff down, but make some Loom videos for every introduction. It'll take you 3 to 4 minutes. It feels personal, and they get to hear from the horse's mouth of what you're trying to do, because there is nothing that can replace a founder's passion than hearing it straight from the founder. And then finally, leverage resources to get introductions. Lolita Taub, who is one of our advisors, she has a matching tool called the Startup Investor Matching Tool. You can go in, you fill out your information, put in your pitch deck, and then it'll go out to all of the investors who are part of that network. And if they're interested, they'll request an intro with you. So that way you can connect. Mercury Bank has an investor database, which has a ton of resources and, list of various people to reach out to. And then finally, Crunchbase. Go to Crunchbase, look at your possible competitors, see who invested, and then make a list of those investors and start reaching out and seeing if there's an opportunity. Because at the end of the day, people are going to be interested if you have something powerful to show. So don't be afraid if you have no network, build your own network.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. For the Looms, is that the kind of thing you would do, a cold outreach, but create a Loom and say, hey, I'm RJ, and here's the Loom of my pitch, kind of?
It sounds crazy. This sounds wild. But the whole reason I even got introduced to one of our first investors is because I had built our pitch deck and everything, recorded a Loom video saying, hi, my name is Arjay Ruggles. I'm CEO and founder of Homeroom. Here's what we're trying to do. I kept it to like 4 minutes, and I just cold emailed and was like, here's the thing. And that's scary, right? Because you're like, but here's the thing. And I say this all the time. The worst they can say is no.
Right.
If they say no, then now you have this thing, you've done it, you've gotten over the hump, you can do it, and you can go and do it better next time. But if they say yes, it took you 4 minutes of your time and you just possibly landed your lead investor, right? So like that's the way to think about it. Don't let the fear of rejection stop you, because you're going to get tons and tons of rejections. Look at those rejections as an opportunity for you to do better next time, and also say to yourself, well, they missed.
Totally. I think it's genius, and especially anything you can do to stand out, right? Because if you're just emailing, hey, can I have a call? Hey, can I have a call? I mean, everyone's doing that, right?
Yep.
So if you can stand out in any way, and especially in a Loom where someone can, I think investors also get a sense of founders just from hearing them pitch. And okay, does this person get it? Are they someone that I want to, I feel like they're gonna lead and run a big company? I think that a video, if a picture is 1,000 words, a video is like 10,000. So
100%.
yeah.
And what's interesting is like, it's especially true for like especially early stage, because the thing is with early stage, like the investors are investing in the founder
Right.
just as much as they are the company. Because at the early stage, like you don't really have much, right? You have a prototype, maybe you have an idea, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, so there's still a lot of unknowns. So getting that connection, I think is so important. And again, leveraging no code, use DocSend to send the deck. You can use, attach the Loom in there, put it all in Notion and make Notion your data room. There's tons of ways to save money and not have to spend a ton of money to do it right.
Yeah, totally. And with no code specifically, I'm curious, like, did they ask questions about the fact that no code? Was that a problem for anyone? Was it a pro for anyone? I'm curious, like, how that process was.
So it's so funny because we only up until now have had one investor who expressed any concerns about the no code thing. And his main thing was, because I really think the narrative of being a tech outsider and closing a fundraising round completely off of no code is a powerful one. And his concern, he was like, well, what does that say if like someone else comes in and they're like, oh, I can do it myself? And my exact response is our differentiating moat and our competitive advantage is our level of knowledge and expertise on community. Someone else could come along and try to replicate what we do, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it right. They're going to do it well, or they're going to execute it well. It's very different. It's very easy to make a Facebook clone. It's very hard to be Facebook, right? Like ultimately the software is just software. It's the individuals running it and managing it and executing it and the team leading it that really matter. And so I think that's what people need to recognize, is that your customers don't care if you built it on Retool. They don't care if they built it on Airtable. They just want it to work and solve their problem. And if it does, they're going to pay you boohoo the money to have it, to keep it.
Yeah, that's an amazing answer. And I'm like, nodding along like, yeah, let's.
You're like the living proof of it. Like, you have this great platform. You have like, what do you say, like 1,000 like members that signed up for so far, and like, you're proving it like natively, like, actively. It's so cool.
Yeah, totally. And no code MBA is built on it's Webflow, Airtable, Zapier, JetBoost,
See?
Matt, the whole platform. Because when I was like, I need to build this in no code if I'm gonna build no code MBA. So right, totally. You can build all sorts of businesses that can scale pretty far. And like you said, no one cares what the programming language is
Nope.
underneath as long as it works.
As long as it works. I mean, it's the exact same, and I'm so happy you said that, because it's the exact same thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like no one cares what Mercury was built in, what language Mercury Bank was built in. We just care that it does what it needs to do and does it well and does it effectively, which it does, by the way. Huge fan of Mercury Bank.
Same. It's like delightful to use compared to like Bank of America or any other bank that.
I had tried a few other banks and did not go well. In particular, I had a really horrible experience with Novo, which was really, really upsetting. And then we went to Mercury, and it was like the heavens had parted and the light had shone. Like, it was wild. I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like we're in such an amazing time now where there are all these amazing products that you can use as a founder, which just didn't exist 10 years. Like 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, you were just stuck with whatever bank there was, and you were stuck with these tools
Well,
that exist and things like that. Yeah.
I think that's what makes me so excited about no code is the entry for people outside of tech to use technology to further their goals.
Right.
I think maybe, Seth, you can relate, is that I think working in tech, it makes you, and then being friends with, or like my husband, for example, is a therapist who works for the government.
Mm-hmm.
So like seeing the difference of opportunity for those outside of tech versus those inside of tech makes you realize just how lucky we are to be in this space, and the opportunities that could open up for a secretary who needs to run reports. She can stop copy and pasting out of Excel. She can just create this app that builds it out for her, and maybe use Retool in order to have it organized in a way. There's so many opportunities for people to leverage it and help them further their careers in whatever area they are, whether they're a writer, a creator, a seamstress, a painter, whatever that might be. There's so many opportunities for them as well.
Yeah, totally. That's a big part of what drives me with No Code MBA as a whole is bringing more people into the digital economy, teaching
Yep.
people the skills that anyone can learn if they're willing to put in a little bit of time, and it just makes it so much more accessible. So yeah, I totally agree. One other thing with fundraising, I know I think storytelling is so important, and that's a really great way to, I think it's important in getting investors and employees and really everyone to buy into your mission. And you're a really amazing storyteller. I can already tell just from this podcast.
Thank
So
you.
I'm curious, like, is there anything, if someone is, putting together their story, what can they think about to put together a good story about their business? Yeah.
That's a good question.
Come naturally. Yeah.
Well, one of it is, I'm sure you noticed, I love to talk.
Uh,
So like that's part of it. I think I just naturally just love to talk. But I think there's a couple of things. One, don't be ashamed of the hard parts of your story. Like I am very open about talking about me being a sex worker and the challenges that presented, and being a tech outsider and having to learn a lot of stuff myself, because I think it's important to highlight. I think a lot of people only see the stories of founders that raise all this money, and then you go, oh, they got a 200,000 loan from their parents, or they were a software engineer who exited out of Stripe and were able to not work for 2 years and be fine. But because of that, a lot of founders then feel like ashamed of their own story because they didn't come from that. No, that is your superpower. That is your strength. The fact that you had to struggle and overcome those obstacles and were still able to achieve this is an accomplishment. So don't be afraid to share it. But then the other thing too is to make sure you tailor your story back to what you're doing, right? So like if there are moments that really like were the biggest catalyst for you to create, or were a pivotal moment in your line of thinking that allowed you to reach where you are, talk about those things and highlight them, and talk about how they affected you and why it brought you here. Because ultimately the story should finish on it should finish on where you landed, but the journey that got you there should highlight all of the different opportunities that then landed you at this destination, because the journey is just as important as the destination. And so yeah, and practice. Stand in front of a mirror, like record yourself. As painful as it is to watch yourself back and listen to your own voice, record yourself, because it'll let you catch things that you might otherwise not have.
Yeah, but both, I love both of those things. One, vulnerability, it's really hard for a lot of people, but it is what makes stories great and helps you connect with people as well. And right practice. The first pitch is never going to be as good as the
No,
100th pitch. And it's just not.
my first pitch was horrible. I had just gotten out of the hospital like the day before, and I ended up going first, and it was bad. It was bad. But to highlight how things can turn around, my very first pitch was to Lolita, and now and it was just horrible. And then now a year later, she's an advisor and has
Yeah.
been such a great resource and helping us figure stuff out. And so you never know what life would take you.
Yeah, that's so true. And also that ties into not being afraid to, send that Loom email
Yep.
or ask for help, because you never know. Like the worst that can happen is someone says no, and there's a lot of things that can happen out of, taking a small risk. Cool. So what are the future plans for Homeroom and for yourself now, kind of looking into the next year?
So obviously closing our fundraising round, really great. But honestly, focusing on our product, getting our MVP out, we're trying to aim for end of quarter 1 as a goal, but you know how it is with startups. It always takes twice as long and twice as expensive as you plan it. So we'll see. But yeah, trying to get our MVP out and really just starting to really highlight the importance of community. I'm a really big believer that community building can be one of the most powerful differentiating modes especially for early stage startups. It's your feedback loop. It's your early users, your evangelical users who are going to share knowledge and get other individuals to buy in. I just really love community building, and trying to share that knowledge with as many people as possible is a really big thing for me. And then finally, just really starting to lean into Web3 and putting myself in the right spaces to be visible, especially as a person of color and a queer person of color at that, in a space that is heavily cis white male dominated, uplifting women and female voices in that space as well, and highlighting their projects, highlighting the stuff that they're working on so they can have a seat at the table as well. Because what I would hate to happen is to repeat all of the mistakes that were made with Web 2 in terms of diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. And so I just really want to be part of that movement to make things more equitable and fair. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. For community, what are some of the things that you're planning to do or already doing to kind of build this community around Homeroom?
Yeah. So we're about to launch our own podcast here
Uh-huh.
probably in the next month or so, which I'm super excited about. I would love to have you on. But yeah, we're primarily going to be talking about community and the intersection between that and Web3. And then additionally, in how community has helped uplift outsiders from outside of tech is something I really want to be able to. As far as it goes for some other spaces, we're finally slowly going to start opening up access to our Discord server. And the reason that we're doing it is not actually to get people on our software platform. I actually want to educate people on Discord. And this is something that most community platforms, besides Circle, but most community platforms, Circle aside, they do a great job at this. They're really bad at it. Can you remember the last time that Slack actually taught you how to use a feature? It's the same thing with Discord, just kind of throws you to the wolves and says, good luck, figure it out. And so what we're hoping to do is do office hours, AMAs, education sessions, teaching them about the platform. So that way people can actually gain value out of it and hopefully stop feeling really overwhelmed in all these servers that they've joined over the past year. And then that hopefully being an opportunity for us to really highlight the importance of community. So yeah.
So it sounds like a big part, making sure that when someone joins your community, you are there helping them, making sure they're getting value right away,
Exactly.
having things on a regular basis so they, there's a reason to stick around and there's a reason to interact with people.
One of our team members, Devian, who actually is our creative solution specialist. So a lot of our stuff in Notion, he builds out our strategy for some of the ways that we implement bots in Discord. His favorite thing to say is talking about basically his reasoning is that anyone can make a blob on the internet, but the importance of community is making a blob that people actually want to come to. And for us, that really, and this is something we try to teach our clients, is that we're community managers. We're community management as a service. We're switching from a service model to a software model. But right now, like, we amplify your voice, but we can't replace your voice. So ultimately, if you're not going to be present, you're not going to be active, and you're not going to be here, the community is going to leave because they're here for you. They're not here for RJ from Homeroom. They're here for you. And so if you're not present, if you're not active, and you're not available, then what is the reason for you building the space?
Yeah, totally. And that's something that it definitely resonates a lot with No Code MBA and like building the community there. And for a while, I have a Circle community and it's not super active, but I know that it's my fault because I'm not that active in that community. And
Yeah.
I've been focused more on building out the content and, building out the platform. And, it's something I've really realized that in order to have a good community, you have to really invest a lot in it. It's not just going to happen by throwing up a circle or throwing up a Discord. And there's definitely, obviously, there's tools, and that's with like what you're building with Homeroom to help you manage it, which is really because it's so hard, right? I can speak to that. It's very difficult to, especially if you have other things in your business that you're trying to
Yes.
do a good job with managing your community as well. So it definitely speaks to like the need and the opportunity of what you're building.
Well, one, you got me to help you out now, so I got you, Seth. But also, yeah, you're right, and I think that's why Alexis Ohanian said it best, is that we're going to see chief community officer become a highly coveted role within large organizations. We see community manager job postings everywhere,
Right.
and I think that's only going to continue to increase.
Yeah, totally. Are you hiring right now for Homeroom?
So we are actually in the process of looking for someone as a fractional community manager and some Discord and Circle education specialists. So if you know someone, feel free to ping me. It's just rj@homeroom.club. We'd love to talk to you.
Cool, awesome. And where can people find more about you, about Homeroom, about Playtyme?
Well, biggest place is probably Twitter. It's just Life with RJ, spelled ARJAY. And yes, you can make pirate jokes. I think it's great. And then, yeah, just Life with RJ is pretty much on all platforms. And then if you're looking for Homeroom, our website is homeroom.club, or you can find us at homeroom_club on Twitter.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I thank you so much for having me, Seth. Like, seriously, this was so exciting. It's so much fun. I can talk about no code for hours, as you can probably see. So thank you so much for having me on. And to anyone who's listening who is like nervous or curious or really confused on where to start, I definitely think what a no code MBA has built is a really great place to start. Like, hop on there, do some looking around, check out some tutorials, and if you ever have any questions, just ping me on Twitter. Happy to help.
Awesome. Cool. This was really an amazing conversation. It was really fun to nerd out on no code, and also to learn about fundraising. There's some really good nuggets in there with fundraising and building a company in general and VR. And it was just such an interesting conversation. So thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Cool.